enjoy baking.
Where are you from?
Where am I from?
Yeah,
I'm
where
from
was you?
Trenton, New Jersey. Oh, you meant like where do I work?
Yeah.
I work at the Digital Equity Laboratory at the New School, and also Community Tech New York is my little startup.
Hi, I'm Iha. I work at the Psych Research Institute, and when I'm not working, I like to travel, not for work. My name is Felicia. I'm a certified athlete, and when I'm not working, I like to do bike rides, volunteer, write a school list, have fun out there.
I'm in data science at UPS, and I like to play soccer. I'm Alexandra Matescu. I'm a researcher at Data and Society. I like to make art.
Hey, I'm Chris Kingsley with the NAACP Foundation in Baltimore. I like to guerrilla garden.
My name is Alex Curtis. I am a master's student in transportation engineering at NYU Tandem. Finishing up this semester. In my free time, I like to study languages and play electric bass.
Second.
And I work for the Internet Affiliate Institute in Bogota.
Hi, my name is Breakout. I'm a data scientist engineer. I'm from Colombia.
Hi, I'm Lisa Kyle Baird. I'm the Director of Policy at LDF. And when I'm not working, I like to listen to music. Hi, my name is Fadila Osibo. I work with the League of Defense Fund. I'm a legal assistant there. And am I supposed to provide a fun fact or something?
Yes, non-work related.
Oh, to read. Some more, I guess. You don't do enough? Right, that's it.
My name's Max. I'm a grad student across the street focusing on tech policy and the intersection of work and tech. And I enjoy cooking.
My name is Jake Head. I'm an MA student in Urban Studies at CUNY School of Labor in Urban Studies, and I also like to read.
Hi, my name's Erica. I'm an engineering manager currently at Etsy. I like making pasta.
Hi, my name is Jessica Lux. I'm an urban planner. I sort of care about the intersection of tech justice and planning. And in my free time, I do Muay Thai.
Hi, I'm Maddie. I'm an independent contractor in AI. In my free time, I like to do hiking as well as walking, long distance walking.
I'm Meredith. I'm the co-founder and co-director of AI Now Institute. And I'm also a yoga teacher.
I'm Peter Roma-Freeman. I am living in DC. I work on technology and discrimination cases, mostly employment, housing, credit discrimination work, and I like to play baseball.
So, just so folks know, Peter and Meredith are like the resident experts here, who have kind of background on a lot of the AI tools used in employment situations. So, do you want the next part?
Sure.
So, just to go around, like, popcorn, any experiences with
So I think maybe the best way to have this conversation about what are these systems, why do they affect us, how do they affect us, and sort of what can we do as workers to sort of reclaim some autonomy from these automated systems, is to kind of get an idea of like how you may have, I think you may have experienced them in your work life. I don't think people go around thinking I've been algorithmically managed, but I think you may know what that looks like on the ground. So like just opening it up, does anyone have an experience that they think might have been an automated system that determined something about their work?
So I'll open up with, I had previously worked at a very large bank, and they had systems that looked at every aspect of your usage of technology from morning to night. So from log in to log out, what you were doing with their systems. And from that, they're able to figure out whether you're being productive or not, quote unquote.
So being older and further along in my career by the time a lot of this stuff I feel like was really being developed, I'm not sure how much it's affected me, but at Casey I worry a lot about like now folks getting entry-level positions that are getting weird Jenga style schedules and are being either screened in or screened out for employment based on, in some cases, like pretty opaque factors. So we don't feel like we really understand the landscape, but I'm really concerned about it.
I heard you say you were a home care worker. I'm curious to ask if you had sort of been asked to use any new logging tools or some changes in home care.
I'd say it's pretty much the same. Doing it for like about 5 years, and I would say that I'm not sure how long the company has been in business, but I feel like everything's been pretty much the same. One thing I can say is that when you call to the company, a lot of times you do get like an automated thing, and it's like you're moving for a long time before you can actually speak to someone. That's my only issue. I've noticed it's become more. That's the only thing that I see.
Add another one. There's quite a bit of work these days that's happening in automatically reading resumes and sorting whether an applicant is to be interviewed or not. And this is being done based on job description and presumably being done based on job description and the applicant's resume. But we don't know what other things do.
Where are you seeing this?
There are a lot of vendors offering these systems in addition to companies using it, but there are a few different vendors that are doing exactly that, including LinkedIn.
Address some of the things people have raised or talk about other systems.
I just want to ask one question. How many people have gone to a restaurant and used a tablet and answered customer service questions? How many people have been in a grocery store, convenience store, Macy's, any retail store?
I mean,
yeah, of course, right? Even all of that feeds into automated decisions that can affect other people's employment. Those tablets affect restaurant workers, and the foot traffic, particularly in convenience stores, affects the schedules for retail workers. So it's interesting when we think about like something being automated and automated decision-making systems. It's not always clear, and so I think maybe I can pass it on to Meredith now, who I think has a great explanation for what, why, how some of these systems may be working.
Yeah, I mean, I want to caveat that a little bit because we've heard the word vendors and we've sort of tried to search through our memories, like when have we encountered these systems. One of the issues we encounter in trying to understand these systems is that they're really hard to see. Oftentimes they're, in big companies, oftentimes the IT will be developed by the company itself and just applied to workers, and there aren't many laws around disclosing these systems to workers or around surveillance of workers. So companies can surveil their workers pretty limitlessly without many protections. I know some people are trying to change that. And of course you can't monitor and you can't automate a lot of these things without surveillance data, whether it be your social media data or data about how you're using their email servers. For smaller companies, and even some big companies, a lot of times they license these systems from vendors. So it's a third-party vendor saying, hey, we're selling a resume scanning service to help you find the best workers more easily and more cost efficiently. But there aren't many checks on these systems to see if they encode racism or misogyny or other patterns of discrimination. There's no standard for auditing these systems. And oftentimes they're sold by a vendor with a lot of really big promises, and the company buying these systems doesn't really know whether they work. There's no test for that. And so when we are able to pry into these systems and look at how they work to test them, which is hard to do because there's a lot of secrecy, there's contractual secrecy, there's the fact that none of these companies have to tell us or advertise. We do see really troubling patterns of bias and discrimination. So a whistleblower at Amazon last year revealed that their resume scanning sort of because Amazon has a culture of misogyny, and that sort of fit their pattern of hiring, that most of the people they would classify as successful were male engineers. And if you even had women in, like if you've gone to a women's college or you studied women's studies, in your resume, it would drop that resume to the bottom of the pile. So that system, they tried to de-bias it. They tried to sort of take out the bias and make it fair to everyone. And they figured out that because the culture at Amazon that this system was built to replicate was so sexist, they couldn't take out the bias from the system and they had to discard it. So I give that longer example to show that, you know, when we do get to look at these systems, oftentimes we see huge problems with them. But most of the systems out there have not been audited, have not been tested, and are oftentimes invisible to the people whose lives they're affecting the most. And I think we all, you know, we may experience a change at work and be like, why am I suddenly getting a bad schedule? Or why am I never getting promoted? Things seem different, I feel different. But because we don't have visibility into the fact that, oh, well, they just signed a contract with a vendor that is implementing a hiring system or implementing a performance assessment system, it can be very difficult for us to know, where do we push back? How do we contest this decision? So all along the hiring pipeline we're seeing, or all along the sort of work pipeline we're seeing these, from recruitment, where they will try to find good candidates based on social media posts that often, you know, are not, you know, these methodologies are not scientifically verified, and that's a really diplomatic way of saying that. Oftentimes they're just trash. But they're sold as like fancy computational systems that people think are smarter than human systems, and oftentimes they save people a lot of money. So they're like, oh, well, we want to be richer, so okay. They're being used for hiring. So there's some companies that are employing video interviews. How many people here have done a video interview ever? Yeah. Okay, so some folks. I'm old, so I haven't recently, but these video interviews are using a technology called affect recognition, and this is this technology has no scientific foundation.
So it's called
affect. Yeah, and affect's kind of a fancy word for like emotion recognition, but it's like that's how they say it. But affect recognition claims to be able to determine, based on how you speak, how your face moves, how you gesture, what your tone of voice is, so all of these outside characteristics, claims to be able to determine your inner state. So am I a good worker? Am I lying? How am I feeling? Am I happy? Am I sad? These things are not scientifically grounded. And when these have been tested, they've been shown to encode racism. They've been shown that, you know, they will see, like, if a black man is smiling in one study, they will show that consistently these systems will rate a black man as less happy than a white man who's smiling the same way, right? So already these systems encode bias, and I think it's really important to note that they replicate the logics of race science and phrenology and physiognomy and this sort of history of racism, those to justify social inequality. So saying, you know, so there's a move right now to sort of push back against those. So those are a couple of examples. I'm going to open up the floor. I'm sure everyone here has others, but this goes all the way through from hiring to worker management in warehouses and factories and Ubers, where it just gives the bosses control to cut your wages, to set your performance, to do all sorts of things, to surveil you. and gives workers much less control to push back. In some cases, these systems can even automatically fire workers without any understanding of what the conditions of work might be, or without human intervention or a way for workers to contest that decision. So,
I have a question. I mean, obviously there's a lot wrong with that, but isn't it, like retention is helpful, right? And it costs less money. And so, isn't there an incentive for the entities to share their evaluation process with their employees so that they can improve rather than include high turnover, or is that not the case?
That's complicated. I think in places like Amazon warehouses and Lyft and Uber, you have a combination of misclassification of workers and a combination of a calculus that says we can just, they've moved to economically depressed areas. They're already,
there's just so much
jobs.
Competition, and that doesn't really
and they sort of exploit
the
economically depressed areas and worker misclassification. It's a longer conversation, but in many industries that's less and less true.
Just because so often your employer wants you to know your evaluation metrics because they want to retain you because it's more expensive to hire new and train again.
But I think, I think that, and this is maybe more historical and labor relations focused, I think even if that's economically irrational for employers to not give data and metrics to their own workers about how they'll be evaluated and what will allow them to progress, I think employers in general want power, right? And they want to keep, and giving away information is a way to give away power. So if you tell, for example, if we have the same job and I'm being paid $10,000 more, and we can talk about that. We can say, hey, that's wrong. She should be paid as much as me. Or we can say, that's wrong. We want a union and we want a contract so that we're all paid fairly or better, right? And so that's maybe it's an American anomaly to some extent, but that's just kind of the evolution of how capitalism unregulated by our federal government with bad labor laws has resulted in this kind of system. But one thing that I wanted to kind of observe is, or make a point there is, you said, well, you're older, right, and you may have a job that you don't, you may not get like a Facebook ad for a job for something that you might be interested in. We can get to that in a second. But LinkedIn. Does anyone have a LinkedIn profile? Okay, right. So you are all part of a database that is called Recruiter or Recruiter Lite, right, where employers who want to recruit people can do very fine-tooth searches and redo them, do A/B testing, and essentially figure out what are the best searches to find applicants that they want to go recruit. So they can send you an in-mail and invite you to apply. And most large companies use these. And it's a way of sorting people, right? There are dozens of data points, including where you went to college or grad school. So they could say, literally, I don't like CUNY, I like Columbia. And they could only search people who went to Columbia in 10 miles of this place, right?
They do, I'm sure.
What?
Yeah.
Which I'm sure they do, absolutely. And it may have put aside the academic point, it may have nothing to do with the actual job, but it's just a preference or it's a hunch. And because they may not be doing any sort of self-critical analysis about what their searches are, what they're missing, right, to see if there's bias and that may be inefficient. They may not refine that in a positive way, right? So, to go back to, for example, one of the areas where I've been doing a lot of litigation is around advertising on social media for jobs and housing and credit, where we discovered that probably about a third to half of all employers that were doing Facebook advertising for jobs were not sending them to older people. They would cut the age of who would get the ad to things like 18 to 38 at T-Mobile and 18 to 45 at Amazon because they wanted younger workers. Trucking companies would only send their ads to men and not women, right? And so there were also racial categories that were being used to target or exclude people. And so what's important about for all of us to consider is that whenever we're using technology, whether it's Google search, whether ads or Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, information is being provided to us because people want us to do something, right? You may be really happy with your job, but there's some other foundation that is looking at your LinkedIn profile or sending you an ad on Facebook about a job that is opening right now. And so that job may be open for 2 or 3 weeks. If you don't hear about that job, but someone else did because of their age or their race or their gender, right? Then that is an opportunity that you missed out on. And so in many ways, because of the incredible amount of information and ways to find out about stuff, we only have so many minutes, right? Attention. People are going to get to us, and whether that's free and fair and equal matters a lot to kind of what that next job is, and whether, so ultimately things like data are our kind of fate in an economic way.
Okay, and I just wanted to also make sure that we touch a little bit on organizing, and I have to speak a little bit to that.
I would prefer to hear from first on that.
Okay.
Laura, speak first, and then I can hear from you.
Okay, great.
Mine is very quick. Going back to the workplace surveillance aspect we talked about earlier. So I'm not American, and back home we do have workplace data protection laws, and the GDPR applies to some degree. Is there any type of workplace data protection in the US, or is that completely...
No.
Okay.
California, maybe.
The GDPR.
I mean, it depends what data. So there's FCRA, federal law applies to consumer background checks, which can include your consumer report, criminal background check. Those are, and there are some at the state level, like biometric protections, but there's very little relative to other countries.
Okay. Thank you.
We need a law.
And we've
Well, I've noticed that a lot of I would say like apps like YouTube and maybe even companies like they have ways of checking people. There are a lot of people that want to do they want to be self-employed, so they try to make their own channel, social media channel, and then they get paid and they try to use it as their source of income. And a lot of them are saying that it's becoming automated where a computer reads the title of their videos or even determines the content of their videos, and if the content is deemed inappropriate as per the computer, they seem like they get demonetized, and it's been happening. So a lot of them are saying, I'm going to go back to more formal terms of employment because my check is not being cut.
That's real. And there has been, I don't know the details of that, but there has been an effort in the last year for creators to unionize, to get a little bit more control over how those decisions are made and have a bit more insight into what is appropriate and what isn't, because oftentimes they don't notify people about what will be appropriate, so they put so much effort into it, and then for some reason, but people don't know.
So we didn't want to leave everybody feeling like hopeless. So I was going to share a little bit about the state of organizing in this area, and I don't know if we have time to talk a little bit about
Okay, sure. I'll talk really briefly about retail workers. So it applies more to retail. There have been several campaigns across the country. I started one when I was in LA to have basically fair schedules. Chronos, and there's others. It's the one that goes to online. Those are the ones that are looking at customer traffic, weather, all these random factors to determine the schedules for workers. The point is to schedule them as lean as possible. This has been made easier to your question of like retention. They're decreasing barriers to to wanting to retain someone. So like churn is becoming easier because so much of the tasks are broken down and the hours are being broken down. So the effort is not about chronos though, but it is about this idea of like flexibility of who gets to determine the basics of flexibility. And is flexibility so to create a culture. So these efforts are really about organizing to identify what happens when an employer calls you in the last week, says we need you in the office or we need you in the store in 2 hours. Takes that worker an hour to get in, and then the employer says actually we only need you for 2 hours instead of 4 hours. So now you've spent 2 hours traveling for 2 hours. Those are a lot of the problems that can be created when technology technical systems don't really take into consideration anything outside of the parameters that a computer really or a company is optimizing for, which speaks also to retention, right? If what they're optimizing for is speed or something else, they really don't care about the other factors that would affect a person's job. So systems are programmed, they don't to do certain things essentially. So the effort is really to create like basic standards for workers. They need early notice, they need their schedules not to change, they need to not have opens, which are closing at 11 p.m. and opening at 5, so they can't even get 7 hours or 8 hours of sleep. So those are some of the efforts that are really other efforts are a little bit legal, but a little bit more than that, which is there are a bunch of fast food workers who sued their companies for requiring them to use fingerprint scans. What's the point? There's so many other easy ways to figure out whether you're locked into work or not. Why should I have to give you my bodily information that's so personal and private to me just to be able to do this? And I know Alexander can talk about something that's happening in healthcare. Yeah, you talk about No, so I've been looking into, I don't know, electronic visitor. So it's a system that's now being required for Medicaid funded care services. It's usually a mobile app-based system that's used to track when care workers are in and out. A lot of them are also using biometric identity verification, including things like facial recognition. So like take a picture of their face and then take a picture of their client to verify that they are where they say they are. And this is automated because it didn't work because it's a machine that's doing that now, right? Like why was that necessary? It wasn't necessary.
There's going to be a breakout session in just 1 minute, so you can choose the next session.
If we have 30 seconds.
So quick.
I've heard stories about a lot of the aides that clock in and they wait for patients and a
Where could we look if we wanted more information on some of the legal efforts, some of the research that you referenced?
If you want to look at some of the work we've done around age, gender, and race-based targeting of economic opportunity advertising, you go to onlineagediscrimination.com. Onlineagediscrimination.com is a website that I have for work we're doing. 10 seconds. In March, we got Facebook to agree to overhaul their employment, housing, and credit advertising so that demographics will no longer be used in that space. And you can no longer redline or by excluding zip codes. You have to advertise for a 15-mile radius or greater, so there's diversity. And but we are still challenging additional issues or types of advertising. We just filed a lawsuit around gender and age discrimination in financial services advertising. So all the banks and companies that you've probably dealt with, insurance, pretty much anything that you want that deals with finances, there's been gender and age discrimination out there, and you were probably affected in some way by it. So we're pursuing that and basically saying the internet is a place of public accommodation that has to be equal and fair for all people, and it's kind of taking the same laws that allowed us to integrate lunch counters in hotels and public spaces and apply that to the internet. Because once we do that, then at least things are going to be more fair, but there's still proxies for all these things, which is kind of gets into the need for disclosure so that the things that aren't explicit demographics like age and race and gender can be used to accomplish the same result.
Thanks.
Where can people find out about labor organizing?
Yes. No.
It depends on the sector because these are across sectors, but SEIU is doing some work on this. The Awood Center outside of Minneapolis has been leading a lot of organizing of Amazon warehouse workers, which are under a lot of distress. There's SEIU in Staten Island has been leading some organizing in Staten Island. There's Gig Workers Rising, which is SEIU affiliated, which is organizing a lot in California around gig workers with Instacart and Uber and Lyft. There's Drivers United, which is a solidarity union that helped push AB 5, which is a really important law a lot of these abuses you can't do if workers are classified as employees, not contractors. So AB5 is important in, even though it's not specific to the automation. And then there's a number of sort of tech worker efforts that are pushing from inside tech companies to say we don't want to build these systems, or to whistleblow around building systems that they feel are hurting people. And then
Fair Work Week. We think of Fair Work Week there, we see those campaigns all across the country. Silicon Valley Rising is part of Gig Worker Rising. It's extending beyond just gig workers to workers that have been contracted by some of the Facebook and other companies.
Sorry to interrupt. The next session is beginning. Kind of over there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So you have enough time. Okay, no problem.